Captain Lee Minho stared at the flickering display screen in his small command room. The distress signal had been coming through for 3 hours now, weak and broken like a dying whisper in the vast darkness of space. His ship, the New Dawn, was far from any major trade routes, patrolling the empty regions where most captains feared to go. "Sir, we're getting another transmission," called out Park Ji-won from the communications station. Her voice carried worry. "It's the same alien language, but the signal is getting weaker." Minho rubbed his tired eyes. He had been captain of this exploration vessel for only 2 years, and in that time, he had learned that space was full of dangers. But he had also learned that sometimes the most dangerous thing was doing nothing at all. "Can you translate any of it?" he asked. Ji-won shook her head. "The computer doesn't recognize the language. But sir, there are life signs on that ship. Maybe 30 or 40 beings, and their numbers are dropping." The bridge fell quiet except for the steady hum of the ship's engines. Minho looked around at his crew. They were all young, like him. Humanity had only been traveling among the stars for 50 years, and they were still learning the rules of this vast galactic community. Commander Kim Tae-ho stepped forward. He was Minho's second in command and usually the voice of caution. "Captain, we should check our records first. What if this is a restricted species? The Galactic Council has very strict rules about who we can help and who we cannot." Minho nodded and turned to the ship's computer. "Computer, search for any species matching this biosignature and language pattern." The computer hummed for several minutes before responding. "Species identified. Villani. Warning. This species is classified as extremely dangerous by the Galactic Council. Current status. Kill on sight order active. All member species are required to report Villani locations immediately." The bridge became completely silent. Everyone stared at the screen showing the official Galactic Council notice. The text was clear and frightening. The Villani were not just criminals or pirates, they were something much worse. "What did they do?" whispered Engineering Officer Cho Subin from her station. The computer continued reading the official report. "The Villani were responsible for the Crimson Death Plague that swept through 47 star systems approximately 15 years ago. Estimated casualties: 4 billion beings across multiple species. The plague was determined to be artificially created using Villani biotechnology." Ji-won gasped. 4 billion? They killed 4 billion people? Minho felt his stomach turn cold. He had heard stories about the Crimson Death from other captains. It was a disease that could kill entire planets, spreading faster than any cure could be developed. The victims died slowly and painfully, their bodies breaking down from the inside. "Sir," said Tae-ho quietly, "regulations are clear. We must report their location to the nearest council station immediately. A strike force will be dispatched to eliminate them." Minho looked at the distress signal data again. The alien ship was clearly dying. Its power was failing and life support systems were breaking down one by one. Whatever weapons or dangerous technology the Villani might have. Once possessed, they clearly didn't have them now. "Captain," said Ji-won, her voice very soft, "I'm picking up something else from their ship. It sounds like children crying." The young captain closed his eyes. In his mind, he could see the official reports he had read about human history. There had been times when his own species had done terrible things. Wars that killed millions. Weapons that could destroy entire cities. Diseases that spread across continents. But humanity had been given chances to learn, to grow, to become better. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked Tae-ho. Minho opened his eyes and looked at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for his decision. He knew what the safe choice was. Follow regulations, report the Villani, and let someone else deal with the problem. It would keep his crew safe and his record clean. But something inside him rebelled against that choice. Maybe it was because humanity was still new to this galactic community. Maybe it was because he remembered his grandmother's stories about refugees who had nowhere else to go. Or maybe it was simply because he could hear children crying in the darkness of space. "Computer," he said slowly, "how long until that ship's life support fails completely?" "Approximately 6 hours, Captain." 6 hours. In 6 hours, 30 or 40 beings would die in the cold vacuum of space. Some of them were children who had never chosen to be part of whatever their species had done 15 years ago. Minho stood up from his captain's chair. Cho Subin, prepare the docking bay for refugees. G1, send a response to their distress call. Tell them we're coming to help. Sir, said Taiho, this is against direct orders from the Galactic Council. We could be branded as criminals ourselves. Minho looked at his second-in-command and smiled sadly. Then I guess we'll have to live with that choice. But I won't let children die in space no matter who their parents are. The New Dawn changed course toward the dying alien vessel, carrying its human crew toward a decision that would change the fate of two species forever. The Villani ship looked like nothing Minho had ever seen before. Instead of metal and steel, it seemed to be made of something that had once been alive. The hull pulsed weakly, like a giant heart that was slowly dying. Strange patterns of light flickered across its surface, growing dimmer with each passing moment. Docking complete, Captain, reported Cho Subin from the engineering station. But sir, their ship it's organic. It's actually alive. And it's dying. Minho stepped through the airlock with Dr. Park Ji-won and 2 security officers. The smell hit them immediately. Not bad, but strange and unfamiliar. The corridors inside the alien ship curved and twisted like the inside of a giant tree. Soft blue light came from the walls themselves, but it was fading fast. They found the survivors in what seemed to be the ship's center. 37 beings sat or lay in a large circular room. Minho had never seen anything like them before. They were tall and thin, with pale skin that seemed to glow softly. Each had 4 large eyes that looked both sad and frightened. Their hands had long, delicate fingers that moved like they were touching invisible things in the air. One of them stood up slowly. She was older than the others, and her skin glowed brighter than the rest. When she spoke, her voice came through their universal translator as soft and musical. You are not Council forces, she said, and Minho could hear surprise in her voice. Who are you? I'm Captain Lee Minho of the human vessel New Dawn, he replied. We received your distress signal. The alien woman's 4 eyes widened. Humans? I do not know this species. She looked at Dr. Ji-won, who was already moving to help some of the younger aliens who looked sick. Why do you help us? Surely you must know what we are. We know you're in trouble, said Ji-won without looking up from her medical scanner. That's enough reason for us. Minho studied the group more carefully. About half of them were clearly children, much smaller than the adults with brighter glowing skin. They stayed close to the older ones, their large eyes watching the humans with curiosity and fear. What's your name? Minho asked the older alien. I am Elder Nari, she replied. I speak for what remains of our group. Her voice became very quiet. We are Villani. The 2 security officers behind Minho tensed up. Everyone in the galaxy knew that name. But as Minho looked around the room, all he saw were tired, scared refugees. Whatever terrible weapons the Villani were supposed to have, these people clearly didn't possess them anymore. Elder Nari, Minho said carefully, we know about the Crimson Death. We know what happened 15 years ago. Nari's skin dimmed until it was barely glowing at all. The other Villani in the room made soft sounds of sadness. Some of the children started to cry, a sound that was somehow both beautiful and heartbreaking. Then you know why we must die, Nari whispered. I know why the galaxy wants you to die, Minho corrected. But I don't know your side of the story. Nari looked at him for a long moment. Her 4 eyes seemed to be searching his face for something. Finally, she gestured for him to sit on the soft living floor of the ship. Our people were healers, she began. For thousands of years, we used our biotechnology to cure diseases, to help other species live longer and healthier lives. We were proud of our abilities. Dr. Ji-won looked up from where she was treating a sick Villani child. What went wrong? Nari's hands moved in complex patterns as she spoke, as if she was weaving her words into the air. Our own children were dying. A genetic disease was spreading through our species, something we had never seen before. Our greatest scientists worked day and night to create a cure. And Minho prompted gently. The cure worked, Nari said, and her voice cracked. But the organism we created to carry the cures, it changed. It evolved beyond our control. What was meant to heal became something that killed. Minho felt a chill run down his spine. You didn't mean for it to spread. We tried to stop it, Nari continued, tears streaming down her glowing face. We destroyed our own laboratories. We quarantined entire systems. Some of our people even killed themselves rather than risk spreading the disease further. But it was too late. One of the Velani children, a small being with bright purple skin patterns, approached Dr. Jiwan shyly. The child held out something that looked like a living flower, offering it as a gift. Jiwan smiled and accepted it gently. We have spent 15 years running, Nari said. Every species in the galaxy hunts us. We cannot land on any world, cannot trade for supplies, cannot even send messages asking for help. Our ships are dying, our people are dying, and we have nowhere left to go. Minho made a decision that surprised even himself. Come with us. What? Nari stared at him in shock. Earth has colonies on the outer rim, places where people go to start over. We can take you there. But your government, your people, they will never allow it, Minho smiled. Maybe. But humans are still new to this galaxy. We make our own decisions about who deserves a second chance. Elder Nari's skin began to glow brighter, and the other Velani in the room started making musical sounds of hope and gratitude. The planet Haven had always been humanity's most difficult colony. Governor Song Hyejin stood on the observation deck of the main settlement, looking out at what had once been a barren wasteland. Red dust had covered everything for as far as the eye could see. The air had been too thin to breathe without masks, and the soil had been so poisoned that nothing would grow. But that was 6 months ago before the Velani arrived. Now, Hyejin watched in amazement as green plants covered the hills where only rocks had existed before. Strange, beautiful trees grew in perfect circles around the human buildings, their branches creating natural shelters from the harsh sun. The air smelled sweet and clean, and for the first time since Haven was founded, people could walk outside without breathing equipment. Governor, you need to see this, called Engineer Bae Junsik from behind her. He was holding a data pad and looked both excited and confused. What is it now? Hyejin asked. Every day brought new surprises since the Velani had begun sharing their biotechnology with the human colonists. The soil quality reports just came back from the farming sector, Junsik said, showing her the numbers on his screen. 3 weeks ago, that land couldn't grow weeds. Now it's more fertile than anything we have on Earth. Hyejin shook her head in wonder. How do they do it? Through the window, she could see Velani working alongside human farmers in the fields. The aliens moved with grace, their glowing hands touching plants that seemed to respond to their presence. Where a Velani walked, flowers bloomed and crops grew taller and stronger. The integration hadn't been easy at first. Many humans were afraid of the Velani, remembering the stories about the Crimson Death Plague. But fear had slowly turned to curiosity, and curiosity had become friendship. The Velani were gentle, patient, and eager to help their new human neighbors. Young Kira, one of the Velani children who had been on Elder Nari's ship, had become especially close to the human children in the colony school. She was teaching them how to sing the growing songs that helped plants flourish, while they taught her human games and stories. Mom, look what Kira showed me today. 8-year-old Tommy Park ran up to his mother, Dr. Jiwan, who had stayed on Haven to serve as the colony's chief medical officer. In his hands, Tommy held a small plant that glowed with soft rainbow colors. It's beautiful, sweetheart, Jiwan said, but she was watching Kira carefully. The young Velani had grown taller and brighter in the months since arriving on Haven. All the Velani had. It was as if the chance to heal and create again had brought them back to life. Kira says the plant will help sick people feel better, Tommy continued. She says her people used to make medicine from plants like this. Jiwan knelt down to Tommy's level. Did she teach you how to make it grow? Tommy nodded eagerly. You have to sing to it and tell it what you want it to do. But only Velani can really talk to plants. Humans can just help a little bit. Not everyone on Haven was happy about the changes. Director Im So-young from Earth's Colonial Authority had arrived the week before, and she was not pleased with what she found. "This is madness," So-young told Governor Hyojin during their private meeting. "We're harboring the galaxy's most wanted criminals. When the Galactic Council finds out about this, they'll declare war on humanity itself." "Look around you," Hyojin replied, gesturing toward the window. 6 months ago, this colony was failing. We couldn't grow food, couldn't purify water, couldn't even keep the air clean. Now we have the most successful colony in human space, built with alien technology. "We don't understand," So-young argued. "What if it's all a trap? What if they're planning to use their biotechnology against us like they did with the plague?" Before Hyojin could answer, Elder Nari entered the room. The Vallani leader had learned to knock on doors and wait for permission to enter, adapting to human customs with grace. "Forgive me for interrupting," Nari said, her 4 eyes moving between the 2 human women. "But I heard raised voices and wanted to ensure all was well." So-young stared at the alien with suspicion and fear. "You're the one they call Elder Nari." "I am," Nari replied simply. "And you are Director So-young from Earth. I have heard much about you." "I bet you have," So-young said coldly. "I'm here to evaluate whether this colony should be shut down and its alien residents relocated." Nari's skin dimmed slightly, but her voice remained calm. "I understand your concerns. My people have brought great pain to this galaxy. But may I ask you to walk with me? There is something I would like to show you." Despite her obvious reluctance, So-young agreed. The 3 women walked through the colony together, past the new gardens and living buildings that the Vallani had grown from seeds. They stopped at the medical center, where human and Vallani healers worked side by side. "Mrs. Chen was dying of lung disease when we arrived," Nari explained, pointing to an elderly human woman who was laughing with her grandchildren in the garden. "Our healing organisms saved her life." They continued to the water treatment facility, where Vallani biofilters had turned poisoned groundwater into the cleanest drinking water in human space. Then to the school, where human children and young Vallani learned together, sharing knowledge that neither species had possessed alone. "We cannot undo what we did 15 years ago," Nari said quietly as they finished their tour. "But we can spend the rest of our lives proving that we have learned from our mistakes." So-young was quiet for a long moment, watching Kira and Tommy playing together near a fountain that sparkled with bioluminescent water plants. "The galaxy will never accept this," she finally said. "Then perhaps," Nari replied, "it is time for the galaxy to change." Admiral Korthak of the Draconic Hegemony had spent 15 years hunting the last of the Vallani. His massive warship, the Iron Claw, had destroyed dozens of their vessels across the galaxy. Each kill brought him closer to his goal of wiping out every last member of the species that had murdered his family. The plague had taken his wife and 2 young children on Draco's Prime. He had watched them die slowly, their bodies breaking down, as the Crimson Death consumed them from within. That memory drove him every day, fueled his hatred, and made him the most feared Vallani hunter in the galaxy. "Admiral," called his intelligence officer from across the bridge, "we have confirmed the location. The remaining Vallani are on a human colony world called Haven." Korthak's scaled hands tightened into fists. "How many?" 37 survivors, sir. All of them from the group that escaped the Outer Rim Purge last year." "And the humans? How many are protecting them?" The officer checked his data pad. "The colony has about 800 human civilians plus a small defense force. Nothing that should concern us, sir." Korthak stood up from his command chair. Around him, the bridge crew of his flagship watched nervously. They all knew their admiral's reputation for ruthlessness when it came to the Vallani. "Send a message to the Galactic Council," Korthak ordered. "Tell them we have found the last Vallani nest. Request permission to cleanse the entire system." The message was sent across the galaxy, and the response came back within hours. The Council's decision was unanimous. The humans had violated galactic law by harboring the Vallani. Both species were now considered enemies of civilized space, Captain Minho received the ultimatum while standing on the bridge of his ship, which was now permanently stationed in orbit around Haven. The message was clear and simple: surrender the Villani within 48 hours, or face total destruction. "Sir," said Commander Tejo, reading from his communications console, "I'm detecting over 200 warships approaching our system. They'll be here in 36 hours. Minho looked at the tactical display showing the massive enemy fleet. Every major species in the galaxy had contributed ships to this force. The humans had exactly 12 vessels to defend Haven, most of them exploration ships that had been hastily armed with whatever weapons they could find. "Any word from Earth?" Minho asked. Tejo nodded grimly. "Fleet Admiral Choi Miran is coming with the entire human navy. 43 ships total. She should arrive just before the enemy fleet does." Minho almost laughed at the impossibility of their situation. 55 human ships against 200 of the galaxy's most advanced warships. It would be over in minutes. Down on Haven's surface, Elder Nari stood in the bio-laboratory that her people had built beneath the colony. Around her, other Villani scientists worked quietly, their glowing hands moving over organic computers that pulsed with life. "Elder," said one of the younger scientists, "we could do it. We could evolve our ships, make them into something the galaxy has never seen before. Our biotechnology could create weapons that would destroy that entire fleet." Nari's skin dimmed as she considered the option. The Villani had always possessed the ability to rapidly evolve their organic technology, to create new forms of life that could serve any purpose. During the Plague Years, some Villani had suggested weaponizing their abilities, but the species had refused. "If we create weapons of war," Nari said quietly, "we prove that everything the galaxy believes about us is true. We become the monsters they say we are." "But if we don't," replied the young scientist, "everyone who protected us will die." The debate continued as the hours passed. Some Villani argued for fighting, others for surrender. But Nari remembered the human children who played with Villani younglings in the colony gardens. She thought of Dr. Jiwon, who had risked her career to help alien refugees. She remembered Captain Minho's kindness when he could have simply followed orders and left them to die in space. Above them, in the colony's command center, Governor Hyejin was coordinating the evacuation of non-essential personnel. But most of the colonists refused to leave. "This is our home now," said Farmer Lee Dongwoo, speaking for many of the settlers. "We're not abandoning our Villani neighbors just because some admiral wants to settle an old score." Young Kira found Tommy Park in the school playground where human and Villani children were still playing together despite the approaching danger. "Are you scared?" Tommy asked her. Kira's skin flickered with nervous patterns of light. "Yes, but my grandmother says that being scared doesn't mean you have to run away." Tommy nodded seriously. "My mom says the same thing. She says sometimes you have to stand up for what's right, even when it's dangerous." The two children looked up at the sky, where they could already see the distant lights of approaching warships. Neither species had asked for this war, but both were prepared to face it together. In his ready room aboard the New Dawn, Captain Minho made final preparations for a battle he knew he couldn't win. But as he looked down at Haven through his viewport, seeing the beautiful world that humans and Villani had built together, he felt no regret about his choice. The galaxy's hunt for the Villani was about to end, one way or another. But the story of an unlikely alliance between two species would continue, no matter what happened in the coming battle. The enemy fleet dropped out of hyperspace right on schedule, their weapons already charging for the final extermination of the galaxy's most hated species. The battle for Haven began at dawn on the colony's third day under siege. Admiral Korthak's massive fleet had surrounded the planet, their weapons pointed at the small human defense force that dared to stand between them and their prey. Captain Minho stood on the bridge of the New Dawn, watching as enemy ships moved into attack formation. His small fleet of human vessels looked like tiny insects compared to the massive warships that filled the space around them. "All ships, this is Captain Minho," he spoke into his communications system. "Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves today. We're fighting for the idea that people can change, that past mistakes don't have to define the future. The first exchange of weapons fire lit up the darkness of space. Human ships dodged and weaved between the larger enemy vessels, using their smaller size and speed to avoid the worst of the damage. But it was clear they couldn't hold out for long. On Haven's surface, the colonists watched the battle through their windows and screens. In the underground biolaboratory, Elder Nari made the hardest decision of her long life. "We will not create weapons," she told her fellow Villani. "But we can still help our friends." The Villani began working with their organic technology, not to create instruments of war, but to heal and protect. They grew new hull armor for the human ships, sending it up in small biopods that attached themselves to damaged vessels and began repairing them instantly. Dr. Jiwan worked in the colony's medical center, treating wounded pilots who were brought down from the battle. Beside her, Villani healers used their abilities to save lives that human medicine alone could not help. "How are we doing up there?" Jiwan asked Commander Taiho, who had been injured when his ship was hit by enemy fire. "Better than expected," Taiho replied, wincing as a Villani healer worked on his burned arm. "The bioarmor is incredible. Our ships are taking hits that should destroy them, but they keep fighting." The battle continued for 2 days. Human ships fought with desperate courage while Villani technology kept them alive and fighting. But slowly, the enemy fleet was winning through sheer numbers. Then, on the morning of the 3rd day, something unexpected happened. "Admiral," called the medical officer aboard Korthak's flagship, "we have a problem. Some kind of disease is spreading through the fleet." Korthak turned from his tactical display, annoyed at the interruption. "What kind of disease?" "Unknown, sir. It started on the outer ships and is moving inward. Symptoms include fever, difficulty breathing, and organ failure. Our medical teams can't identify it or treat it." Within hours, the mysterious plague was affecting dozens of ships. Crew members collapsed at their stations. Medical bays filled with the sick and dying. The great fleet that had come to destroy the Villani was being destroyed by an enemy they couldn't see or fight. "Sir," reported the communications officer, "we're receiving a message from the human colony." "Put it through," Korthak ordered, his voice tight with pain. He was beginning to feel the effects of the disease himself. Elder Nari's face appeared on the main screen. Behind her stood Captain Minho and Governor Hyejin. "Admiral Korthak," Nari said, her voice calm and sad. "We know about the plague affecting your fleet. Did you create this?" Korthak demanded, though he could barely speak, through his fever. "No," Nari replied. "This is a natural mutation, something that grows in the recycled air systems of large military ships. We have seen it before, in other fleets that hunted us across the galaxy." Korthak stared at her in confusion. "Then why are you telling me this?" "Because we can cure it," Nari said simply. "And because no one deserves to die from disease, not even our enemies." The Admiral's scaled face twisted with rage and disbelief. "You would save us? After we came here to kill you?" "Yes," Nari answered. "Because that is who we choose to be. Against the protests of some human defenders, and despite the objections of some Villani who remembered their long persecution, the healing began. Villani medical ships launched from Haven, carrying biomedical supplies and volunteer doctors to the enemy fleet. Kira and Tommy worked together in the colony's biolaboratory, helping to grow the healing organisms that would save their enemies. Other Villani and human children joined them, turning the laboratory into a place where two species worked side by side to preserve life. Admiral Korthak found himself in the strange position of being treated by the very people he had come to destroy. As Villani healers worked to save his life, he watched through his medical bay window as similar scenes played out across his fleet. "Why?" he asked Elder Nari when she came to check on his treatment personally. Nari sat beside his medical bed, her 4 eyes filled with ancient sadness. 15 years ago, my people accidentally created a plague that killed billions. Every day since then, we have lived with that guilt. Today we choose to be healers again, not because it erases our past, but because it defines our future. The news of what happened at Haven spread across the galaxy faster than any plague. Species that had supported the extermination of the Villani watched in amazement as their own soldiers were saved by those they had come to kill. The Galactic Council, faced with undeniable proof of Villani redemption and human moral courage, voted to end the genocide order. The Villani would be allowed to exist under human protection, proving through their actions that a species could learn from its worst mistakes. On Haven, human and Villani children played together in gardens that bloomed with impossible beauty, two species building a future where compassion was stronger than hatred, and where the past could not overshadow the hope of tomorrow.